Pomegranate. An electrical tower in the snow. A flag that points to the east in strong wind, in the snow. A highway, two human figures with submachine guns. A third man crouches on the ground, in the snow. One has an erection. Maybe he only holds a banana. In front of him, 4 frozen puddles. After the comma, I see a row of Chinese figures. Google translates this as: Wenn ich aufwache, ist es, als würde ich direkt von irgendwo in die Hölle fallen. Or, when I wake up, it's like falling straight to hell from somewhere. This is how the German writer interpreted the first lines of abstract Asian characters in the Chinese author's prose, translated for me into English by Google Translate. I will continue translating this text into my language, myself. Pomegranate. 1. The heat took me by surprise. It was as if I had been struck by a kind of amnesia that made me forget what season I was in. I woke up in the middle of the night, soaked in sweat and twisting on my bed as if I had been hurled from the snowy Arctic into the humid tropics. Perhaps this sweltering heat was caused by my climactic inexperience and my inflexibility and inability to adapt. Adapt to new acquaintances, to foreign foods, to unaccustomed weather conditions. The thing is, I wasn't on the road to Hong Kong or Timbuktu. I was at home in my own hemisphere and my time zone, in my own bed. Still, the thermometer persisted in its attacks of oppression. The sheets and blankets were thrown to the floor. I spent long nocturnal hours tormented by dark thoughts as sleep eluded me and heat abused me. The days offered no relief, as the temperatures only intensified. As uncomfortable as I was, I didn't try to do anything to try to adjust to the situation. For example, if there was a pleasant cooling off in the morning, I ignored it. Finally, having found sleep after a fitful night, I stayed in bed until the afternoon, when the heat had become unbearable again. I went out when the sun was at its peak and the air was thick and heavy. I didn't take naps and refused to go swimming. At around sunset, I tried to do some work, but it was hopeless. And then, in the evening, when the rain began to fall and life began to stir outside my window, I was already in bed. Feeling as though all vivacity had been wrung out of me, I began my nightly ordeal of tropical onslaughts and broken, tormented sleep. One night, as I lay sleeplessly sweating in my bed, I heard noises approaching on the street below my window. An engine came to a halt, and a growling voice slurred, "That's it. Get out. Get the fuck out. Go, you cock-sucking twat. Get your fat pomegranate ass out of my fucking car. Holy shit, look at that. Fucking juice all over my car. Holy fucking bloody shit, you get the fucking cunt crap out of my face. Fucking pomegranate." A car door slammed, a bottle smashed on the pavement, and the engine faded into the distance. Then there was silence. Again, I was left alone with my thoughts, in the heat and in the dark. But now that that word had been uttered, it was impossible not to think about that thing, the pomegranate. An image of the fruit took up residence in my mind, a pomegranate, round and red and succulent. It grew in warm, dry places, I thought. I imagined that this pomegranate grew not on a leafy bush with lots of other pomegranates, but alone, and not in an arid desert-like climate, but in a soft, humid place, like here. The warm orchard was my room, and the bush, I thought, that was me. Yes, this fruit had been a part of me all this time, and I had never really noticed it. The pomegranate grew in me, on me, out of me. I felt its weight and sensed the red juice ripening inside of me. 2. A few days later, my friend Z called. As soon as I told her about the pomegranate, Z said she wanted to borrow it, just for the weekend. I tried to explain to her that this was not possible. The pomegranate was part of me. It grew from my abdomen, out of a silky ruby flower, and I did not know what would happen if I tried to tear the fruit from my body. Maybe I would bleed to death. But Z wouldn't hear any of it. She said, "I'll buy you lunch." So we made a date for the following day. The restaurant we met at was on the busiest street corner of the city. We were stopped at the door by a waitress, a compact woman in a white blouse, sweat-soaked and stuck to her skin around her breasts and armpits. She apologized that the air conditioning was broken and offered to seat us outside. I looked around the room. The sun was beating down on the interior through the plate glass windows, and the fumes from the kitchen hung heavily in the air. I saw a few human figures planted at tables under the clouds of steam, lethargic with exhaustion. The cook leaned over her grill, and a dishwasher slowly fanned her face with a metal strainer. It had to be hell to work here at those temperatures, I thought. And yet, somehow I found an attraction in it. Yes, I suddenly could not imagine anything more appealing than taking a seat here at one of these tables, in the axis of the sun and steaming pots. A place in the velvet humidity, I thought, and felt the vegetable parts of me becoming firm and expansive in my body. No, that doesn't bother us. Are you serious? The waitress seemed stunned. Forget it, Z said. Don't listen to her. She's out of her mind. Of course we'll sit outside. Either we stay in here or I'm going home. It's too loud outside anyway. If you want to talk to me, we're sitting right here. Z didn't have a choice. As soon as our food arrived, Z began talking about the pomegranate. She said that she needed it urgently. A while back, she explained she had raised exactly such a pomegranate as that. And to this day, she had not recovered from the pain of having lost it to a vicious fungus. At first, there was only a little white spot on the skin, and then it all happened very fast. It shriveled up, just like that. I told you already, it won't work. Z did not seem to understand that the pomegranate was only one part of the whole fruitification. I need it, she pleaded. What for? I just need it. Please, give it to me. Never ask me that again. I'm begging you. I had never seen Z so desperate. She seemed obsessed with the pomegranate. The pomegranate was actually the least interesting part of the whole fruit. It had formed a flower, a magnificent, luscious flower, which seems to absorb light differently. The colors, the smell, the warmth of the petals, together with the mighty globe, made me feel utterly transformed. I was, in fact, a completely new woman. Still, Z was only interested in the pomegranate. I'll be really careful with it. Suddenly, I was overcome by the desire to pour my soup in Z's lap and might have grabbed the bowl if the warm fumes of the restaurant hadn't calmed me. In the end, we parted without coming to any agreement. 3. The days went on, and the heat did not abate. The unseasonable summer did not pass. I hardly left the apartment. I gave up all semblance of work and didn't bother to close the blinds or turn on the air conditioner, even at the peak of the afternoon. I took to putting up a big pot of water to boil on the stove, just because I liked to watch the steam rising in the air. I did not consume anything except for some water and coffee, but although I had often craved my old staple of coffee, the black grounds did not taste very good to me anymore, and it required asserted perseverance to chew and swallow the crumbs. Still, I thought I would make the effort. Meanwhile, the pomegranate grew. The fruit belonged to me in a very existential way. Sometimes I almost forgot it, but then was struck anew with wonder at the smooth curve of the warm red dome that rested between my thighs as I lay in bed. One particular thing. Sometimes I noticed a small crimson droplet staining my sheet when I awoke. But despite careful inspection, I could find no cut or fissure from where the fluid could have escaped. I had not heard from Z since our last meeting. 4. I had not been on the street for days. Every step was unpleasant to me. It was not just the weight of the orb between my legs that made it so hard for me to leave the house. It was my feet that I could hardly lift from the floor. It was as if I were on another planet, a strange one with a larger sphere and mass, a greater gravitational attraction. Sometimes I stayed in the kitchen for hours, standing at my favorite spot in front of the window facing south. When I had finished the last of my coffee, I had no choice but to go out. I looked for a dress that would fit my new form and found that my day shift was the most expansive piece of clothing that I possessed. I then arranged the fruit vine with the pomegranate carefully between my thighs before putting one foot heavily before the next. I felt sick in the elevator. The movement of the ground felt unnatural, as if I were making a parabolic flight. Aside from that, I longed for the sun, the light. The elevator was interrupted on its way to the ground floor, an unbearable delay to me. A man got on, and I noticed him staring at my legs with a look that was a mixture of disgust and pity. Maybe he took the bulge of my pomegranate and the trace of juice on my leg for a leaking tumor. He probably thought I was sick. The proximity of the man was unbearable to me. Overwhelmed by a dizzy spell, I gripped the handrail. "Are you all right?" I wanted to answer him, but only then did I realize that I had not spoken for a long time. I only managed to grunt. Normally, when I sensed encroaching panic, I made myself think of a joke because it was impossible to both laugh and be afraid at the same time. Did I know a pomegranate joke? A pomegranate and a donut are sitting around talking, and the donut says to the pomegranate, "Everyone is always licking everything but my hole." And the pomegranate says, what does the pomegranate say? No idea. I forced a thin smile, uttering a low guttural sound. Disgusted, the man turned away, his compassion gone. 5. Every day I boiled a fresh batch of coffee, spread newspapers on the kitchen floor, and sprinkled the warm coffee grounds into a soft mound on top of that. I didn't eat it all anymore, and when I drank, I let the water trickle down my chest onto my feet. I was nourished from below. I didn't know how the process functioned, but it did the trick. The cooler the water and the fresher the ground of coffee on which I stood, the stronger I felt. The pomegranate continued to grow. In the beginning, it expanded in circumference, and then it gained an intensity of color. In the sunlight that fell through the kitchen window, it radiated a deep vermilion blush. Soon it would reach full maturity. What would happen after that? I never asked myself. I don't think about the future. The present tense spread out and filled my consciousness. I closed my eyes and thought briefly, forever. And then all that I perceived was light. Sometimes I could sense the wetness of a person in the room with me. There was a voice that spoke to me, pouring water on my feet, spreading coffee grounds on the floor. I was provided with what I could not get through nature, here, at my favorite place, in my hothouse. I was grateful. One day, in the dim morning light, I realized that it was time. I felt around with my hand to reach for that which hung so heavily on me. The fruit dropped free and rolled away. It seemed that I had not felt so light for a long time.